In the headlines, the historic touchdown of a lander on a speeding comet opens the possibility of learning more about the origins of the solar system. The European Space Agency says this Rosetta mission has secured a place in the history books. More than 500,000 students in Korea take the college entrance exam. Stakes were high enough to delay the country's morning commute and temporarily ground flights during the test. And leaders from 18 countries gather in Myanmar for this year's East Asia Summit. President Park Geun-hye calls for closer cooperation for disaster management and counter-terrorism. Hello and welcome. You're watching Primetime News and ARIRANG News, that is, and I'm Kang Chery in Seoul. It was a big day for high school seniors here in Korea today. More than 640,000 students took the grueling 8-hour college entrance exam that may probably be the most important test of their lives. The test will play a primary role in determining which college they will get into, and deemed so important that airplanes are grounded for a 35-minute period in the afternoon during the listening portion of the test, and morning commutes for many and stock markets opens were delayed to clear the roads for students getting to the test venues. And we go through this college entrance exam every year, and every year we get to see some of the amazing, phenomenal scenes here in Korea. Our Shin Se-min gives us a look.
These young people are not in trouble. They're just getting a helpful ride on the back of police motorcycles or in patrol cars to get to school on time. It only happens on this day of the year, the day they take their college entrance exam. They must be in their seats by 8:10 in the morning because today, excuses like these won't fly. So volunteers on motorcycles were on standby to give speedy escorts to test sites. That's not all. Once they arrive at their test sites, fellow high school students greet them in an unthinkable and surprising manner. Parents pray outside school gates. Not even the freezing weather is stopping high school juniors from cheering on their senior classmen to ace the exam.
With all our spirit, we wish the seniors to perform their best on the exam.
This one-of-a-kind phenomenon, unique to Korea, is culturally important, as many believe the exam will not only determine what college test takers get accepted to, but also their next job, level of success, and future. Shin Se-min, ARIRANG News.
If you're Korean, you would probably already know a number of superstitions related to exams. Mothers used to stick taffy on the front gate of the school while waiting for their kids to get done with the exam. It was a symbolic gesture hoping that their kids would stick to their first college choice. And there's more, and our Connie Lee explains some of the fun and at times even ridiculous beliefs.
So how far would you go to ace your college entrance exams?
I won't be washing my hair.
To do well on the exam, I'm eating taffy and chocolates.
Not your typical study habits, but the exam is deemed so important that the students will do whatever it takes for that high score, even taking part in some
superstitions.
One of the biggest ones is that students eat the right snacks. It's either taffy or rice cakes. Why? Because they're sticky. These come in neat gift sets this time of year, and as they say, eating these snacks will help the study material stick in the students' minds and help them stick to their top college choice from their high scores. While these snacks are okay to eat, one superstition says that test takers should avoid eating seaweed soup. So much so that some restaurants specializing in seaweed even close on this day.
한 번은 열은 적이 있었어요.
I opened my restaurant on exam day before, but no customers came in. Since then, I've closed every year.
There's a belief that the slippery seaweed could lead the test taker to slip away from success and fail. But for success on test day, receiving certain items is also common.
As good luck charms, students either get a fork or a pair of tweezers to help them pick or pluck out the correct test answers.
Since most of the questions on the exam are multiple choice, it is quite important to make the right picks. Finally, there are some students who avoid washing their hair ahead of the test.
My friends and I believe that washing your hair can wash away what you studied.
These superstitious acts show just how much importance the nation places on education. It's not like most Koreans actually believe in these superstitions, but adhering to them acts as a bit of a stress reliever.
Connie Lee, ARIRANG News.
And in other news, on the sidelines of the annual East Asia Summit in Myanmar Thursday, President Park Geun-hye held bilateral talks with Thai Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha. President Park promoted Korea's advanced technology in water management and then requested her counterpart to give Korean firms priority when selecting a bidder for a part of its $10 billion river management project. The Chan-o-cha government is currently reviewing the decision to give Korean firms priority for $5.7 billion worth of the project. The Thai Prime Minister promised to reconsider Korean companies and asked Korean participation in his country's infrastructure construction. So it's quite a busy week for regional diplomacy, and staying with that theme and President Park, she has expressed hope to have a trilateral summit with China and Japan as a follow-up on the three countries' foreign ministers meeting in the near future. This was her speaking at ASEAN Plus 3 meeting held in Myanmar, and Myanmar was actually the venue for another chance for the leaders of 18 countries to discuss a range of regional and global issues at this year's East Asia Summit. Our Choi Yoo-sun has more.
President Park Geun-hye's Northeast Asia Peace Initiative was praised by the UN chief at the annual East Asia Summit in Myanmar. Addressing the 18-nation forum Thursday, UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon said he welcomes Seoul's efforts to reinforce security cooperation in Northeast Asia and to reduce differences between the nations through dialogue. Thanking the UN chief, President Park called on the EAS member nations, saying it's time to more actively work together in the forum's key areas of priority, such as disaster management and health. In that regard, she welcomed an agreement to jointly minimize damage from disasters in Asia, adding next year's World Water Forum in Korea will offer a venue for EAS members to discuss water disaster management. On the Ebola crisis, President Park backed the EAS, agreeing to boost preventive systems, then mentioned Korea's decision to send healthcare personnel to affected countries in West Africa. She then emphasized that the international community must jointly counter threats by Islamic State militants in the Middle East, pledging that Korea will fully comply with the UN Security Council resolution to block terrorist operations. The president also highlighted the need for East Asian countries linked by the sea to work together to ensure maritime security for peace and prosperity in the region. President Park now heads to Brisbane, Australia to attend this year's G20 Leaders Summit. There she will continue promoting her economic innovation plan as an initiative to address global problems of low growth and high unemployment. Choi Yoo-sun, ARIRANG News, Naypyidaw.
The UN envoy on North Korean human rights, Marzuki Darusman, has once again called on referring the regime's leader to the International Criminal Court. This comes as the UN General Assembly is expected to adopt a resolution on North Korean human rights next month. Hwang Sung-hee reports.
UN Special Rapporteur on North Korean human rights Marzuki Darusman reiterated that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un should be taken to the International Criminal Court for his serious human rights violations.
It's only now that we are now in a position to, in fact, direct culpability on the supreme leader for these massive human rights violations.
At a forum in Seoul on Thursday, the UN envoy said the report published by the Commission of Inquiry on Human Rights in North Korea pointed unequivocally to the North Korean leadership for being responsible for the inhumane treatment of its 25 million population. Noting Pyongyang's recent invitation to Darusman, U.S. Special Envoy for North Korean human rights issues Robert King said the report is effective in slowly changing the North.
He's been denied visits to North Korea for 4.5 years. The North Koreans indicate that they're willing to invite him to Pyongyang as long as the text of the resolution is modified. I think these are all very clear indications of North Korean concerns about the focus on their human rights record.
As the UN General Assembly prepares to vote on the human rights resolution in mid-December, the two human rights figures agreed on adding more pressure on the regime. Both Darusman and King agreed that the next crucial step would be to link the North Korean human rights issue with security dimensions by listing it in the agenda of the UN Security Council. Kang Chery, ARIRANG News.
But North Korea may have found an ally in fighting against a UN draft resolution that aims to refer the regime to the International Criminal Court for its human rights violations. Cuba reportedly has come up with a revised version of resolution saying that the ICC referral is a dangerous precedent that could be applied in the future against any developing country. This is believed that the language may be aimed at garnering support from African countries. The UN General Assembly has adopted a resolution against North Korea's human rights abuses every year since 2005, but this year's aims to go a step further and refer North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and others under him to The Hague. Korea's central bank has left its key rate steady at its lowest ever, 2%. But with mounting pressure to tackle the weakening Japanese yen and to prop up its still sluggish domestic economy, pundits are expecting another rate cut. Hwang Jae has the details.
The Bank of Korea on Thursday decided to keep its key rate unchanged at 2%. This follows two previous rate cuts in the second half of this year that left the country's base rate at a historic low not seen since the height of the global financial crisis in 2009.
The Monetary Policy Committee considered the fact that there's a need to wait and see the impact of the two previous rate cuts and to achieve financial stability amid the recent rapid rise in the country's household debt.
Still, market expectations are mounting over an additional rate cut in the next couple of months. Analysts cite the domestic economy remaining sluggish despite aggressive government stimulus measures and other uncertainties abroad.
Recently, the Bank of Japan decided to expand their QQE. Surprisingly, and that actually had an impact on the 1 yen cross rate. And I think the business the leaders, the corporations, I think because of that uncertainty, they probably don't want to invest at this point.
Korea's top central banker, however, ruled out the possibility of more monetary easing to counteract the weak yen, saying the exchange rate is swayed more by factors like the conditions of major economies and international capital flow than the key interest rate. He added that the current 2% rate is accommodative enough to support the country's recovery momentum. Now all eyes are on the fourth quarter growth rate that will be unveiled in January. Experts say a worse than expected figure would add pressure on the central bank to further cut its key rate as a means to prop up growth. Hwang Jae, ARIRANG News.
The National Assembly's Foreign Affairs Committee has passed bills for free trade agreements with Australia and Canada, respectively, paving the way for the ratification of these pacts soon. Earlier this afternoon, the ruling and opposition parties agreed to ratify the trade pacts no later than December 2nd. To quell some of the concerns that these agreements would hurt Korea's livestock sector the most, the ministers of Finance and Agriculture agreed today on the terms for helping Korean livestock farmers in getting lower interest rates on their loans or exporting their products. A group of Korean medical personnel have embarked on a trip to Sierra Leone as part of government efforts to help contain the deadly Ebola virus in West Africa. The team will stay there for about a week or so to assess the conditions there so that the Korean government can later decide on the final scale of its support team. Connie Kim tells us more.
Korea dispatched its first group of medical personnel to Sierra Leone this Thursday to give the Ebola-stricken country a much-needed helping hand.
We will lay the groundwork to ensure the best conditions for our medical staff while they tend to the needs there.
Seoul's Foreign Affairs Ministry says the volunteering doctors, nurses, and military officers will first visit Britain before traveling to the West African country. The group is being dispatched in advance to check the medical facilities and working conditions in Sierra Leone. Staying there until November 21st, the Korean team will work at a British Ebola treatment facility in the capital Freetown with other health experts from countries such as Britain and Denmark. The deployment comes as the World Health Organization reports the total death toll from this Ebola outbreak has now surpassed 5,000. The number of new cases are slowing in Liberia and Guinea, but Ebola is still spreading fast in Sierra Leone. On Sunday alone, 111 new Ebola cases were reported in the West African country, one of the highest daily rates ever recorded. And making matters worse is that only 19 out of the 53 treatment centers in the country are operating due to a lack of medical supplies and personnel. As fears grow about the devastating effects Ebola is having on Sierra Leone, Korea has vowed to continue its support even after the first team returns to Korea. After receiving assessments from the first task force team, the Korean government will decide upon the final number of medical staff to send to Sierra Leone. 145 doctors, nurses, laboratory technicians, and safety managers applied to join the global efforts. The number of applicants far outstripped the government's expectations, but Seoul only plans to send less than 40 personnel to the West African country by the end of December. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Korea's largest art fair devoted to introducing limited edition artwork opened today. Our Park Geun-hye helps us take a sneak peek at the four-day exhibition.
Ranging from photos and woodcut prints to 3D computer artwork, this fair is all about art pieces that have a limited number of editions. Since 1995, the annual International Art Fair has invited a number of participants and guests from all over the world. This year's includes 51 galleries from 15 countries. Those who visit will get close access to the artists themselves and exhibit booths.
My works are about the endless networks of our lives that interconnect everyone. It looks like a plant, as plants represent the circles of life, from its creation to extinction.
In this project, I did a performance in a site near the Auschwitz camp where people were shot. And I asked the audience, there were about 300 people, I asked them to write down the names of the people they love and put them in candles, and the candles went down the river to the ocean. So it became this kind of celebration of life.
On the sidelines of the festival, diverse programs are being offered, from artist talks and collaborative projects to printmaking classes. The festival continues until this Sunday at the Hangaram Art Museum of Seoul Arts Center. Park Geun-hye, ARIRANG News.
The Rosetta space mission has successfully made the first ever landing on a speeding comet, marking a historic moment for mankind. And to tell us more about this story and more, Paul Lee is joining us from the News Center. Paul, the European Space Agency erupted in celebrations on Wednesday, but it looks like they were short-lived.
Well, scientists at the ESA are poring over the latest telemetry from the robot space probe with mixed reactions. Following a turbulent descent, the Philae lander safely made contact with the comet's surface, which in itself is a tremendous accomplishment. However, a malfunction with the anchoring system has now placed decades of work and the multi-billion-dollar mission in jeopardy. Our Chi Myung-gil has the details.
There were scenes of jubilation at the European Space Agency as the Rosetta's lander made a historic touchdown on the speeding comet. Scientists say they received confirmation from the small robotic probe named Philae after a roughly 7-hour descent as it made a bumpy landing on the surface of Comet 67P. The actual status remains unclear, however, after harpoons designed to firmly attach Philae to the comet failed to fire.
So we have science data coming, we have pictures, we have measurements from all the instruments. Science continue coming. Of course, the scientific experiments will start a bit later.
The landing is a feat of space engineering, considering the whole expedition hinged on unproven landing technology, and the comet is whizzing through space at a staggering 18 kilometers per second. In search of the secrets of the solar system, the mission has been 2 decades in the making and explores not just life on Earth, but the possibility of life elsewhere. Scientists also hope to discover more about comets, which are predominantly clusters of dust and ice.
There's a lot of new information about the origins of our solar system, of our own planet, the water which is on our planet. Does it come from such comets? And I think that indeed justifies all this effort.
The probe will start doing scientific experiments, taking pictures and analyzing the comet's surface once it's properly secured and stabilized. Chi Myung-gil, ARIRANG News.
And getting back to more terrestrial affairs, U.S. President Barack Obama is set to hold talks with his counterpart in Myanmar on the sidelines of the East Asia summit that we were talking about earlier on. However, ahead of his debut at the gathering, Obama reportedly gave a stern warning to the country's leaders.
That's right. In an interview with the Thai-based Irrawaddy magazine, Obama said though there had been some progress after Myanmar transitioned from military to civilian rule back in 2010, he stressed that there was a slowdown in democratic reforms and even some steps backward. He cited state restrictions on political prisoners, the oppression of free journalism, and the persecution of the Rohingya Muslim minority. Earlier, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon praised the government's push towards democracy, but he too said human rights still remained a high priority.
I also expressed my concern about the Rohingya population who face discrimination and violence. I encourage the leaders of Myanmar to uphold human rights, take a strong stance against incitement, and ensure humanitarian access to Rohingya living in vulnerable conditions.
Ban made the remarks following talks with Myanmar's leaders on Wednesday. The UN chief had arrived in the capital Naypyidaw to attend the regional summit, while bringing further attention to West Africa's Ebola crisis and rising tensions in eastern Ukraine.
And turning to the U.S., a horrifying scene unfolding in New York City, Paul. It's ended in relief, though, when 2 window washers in distress were pulled to safety outside of the One World Trade Center. Give us the details of this high-rise rescue.
Well, the 2 workers were left hanging for their lives for nearly 2 hours outside the 68th floor when their platform gave way on Wednesday afternoon. Firefighters had to cut through 3 layers of glass, 2 with diamond saws to reach them, as they remained stuck alongside the city's tallest skyscraper. Speaking at a news conference, Fire Commissioner Daniel Nigro said the men remained calm despite the circumstances.
Firefighters went to the roof and to the 68th floor. From the roof, they dropped rope down to additionally secure the members that were the workers on the scaffold. When that was opened, the workers were safely brought in and were transported to the hospital with only mild hypothermia, and that was the extent of the injuries.
The commissioner added that the reason behind the accident was still under investigation. He said that the cable supporting the scaffolding on one side had developed an excess amount of slack due to an apparent equipment failure.
And finally, Paul, one of the most sought-after rings in the world has been sold for a record-breaking $8.6 million at an auction in Europe. Is there a story behind this extravagant purchase?
Well, it's called the Graf Ruby, and it features an 8.62 carat gemstone placed in a diamond-encrusted ring. Needless to say, it's absolutely stunning. The precious stone had soared above all previous appraisals on Wednesday at Sotheby's auction house in Geneva. The final bid came at a record price for a ruby at over $997,000 per carat. The star jewel was bought by British billionaire Lawrence Graf, who was a previous owner in 2006. Shortly after the sale, when asked why he took back the stone, Graf said it was a natural thing to do. Charity?
Absolutely stunning. I agree. Thank you so much for these stories, Paul, and we'll see you back here in just about 2 hours. And that will do it for this edition of ARIRANG News. Thanks for watching and have a great evening.